It's that time of, well, the week, the fortnight, the
That's
year. I don't
beautifully
know.
done.
Yeah. I put a lot of thought into this intro. But, anyways, it's me, Chucky, and we've got Jigsaw as well.
JJ Jaggy, that is what they call me.
G Money. Yeah. Anyways, let's let everyone know what we've got up for this week. So, we're starting with White Noise from 2005, an EVP movie. I don't think we get a lot of those. But anyways, that's first up. Then we'll be moving on to The Birds from 1963, one of the other Hitchcock classics. Then we'll move on to Evil Come, Evil Go from 1972. And there's certainly some evil and some come.
Beautifully described.
Yeah. Then we've got Brick from 2005, in which Joseph Gordon Levitt channels his inner Jiggy. Yeah, that's good. And then we finish off with The Burning from 1981. Fairly classic slasher, at least to slasher fans, I'd say.
So we're starting off tonight with us Chucky Sad White Noise from 2005, in which an architect loses his wife and deeply misses her, of course, and tries to reconnect with her via voices from beyond the grave with some equipment that is, supposedly captures ghosts and talking and stuff. And then it sort of leads into him being able to save people from potential death and some evil ghosts and shenanigans and such going on. And what probably makes it most interesting is that the main character, architect, is played by Michael Keaton, who most people would probably recognize from the classic Batman movie. Aside from Keaton, though, I feel like there's not really a whole lot of necessarily interesting things in this movie. It's a decently made movie. It looks nice. Personally, I didn't find a lot of it necessarily gripping. But I am sort of curious what you thought about this one because I don't know. To me, this seems like aside from the whole EVP thing, a somewhat forgettable movie. But what's your take on it?
Yeah. Well, my take is pretty much your take. I first saw this one in the theaters, and I sort of have some memories of this one because when I saw it in the theaters, and yeah, it was okay. Nothing, nothing great, nothing bad either. But like you said, not all that gripping, and I think it was like only a few weeks later I ended up getting a whole bunch of copies for free from the studio. Only a few weeks later on DVD, so um, obviously I gave a bunch of those away. Kept one for myself just so I could watch it again at some point. And yeah, that's the same copy I used to watch this now, roughly, 15 years later. So that was nice. Came in handy, I guess.
Yeah, if it makes you think about it, I actually paid like $3 for it. So
Wow, that's cool. But yeah, I think pretty much everything he said was quite spot on. Michael Keaton, I like Michael Keaton ever since Batman because Batman, the first Michael Keaton Batman movie, was the first movie I ever saw in theaters. So, I've got this attachment, I guess, to that particular actor. And his performance isn't anything to really throw a big celebration about, but he puts in a serviceable performance. We'll put it at that. Like it just feels like a generic movie for supernatural, whether it's EVP or ghosts or whatever it is. It just doesn't feel like it gets or it's special in any way. It's got a couple of jumpy moments, but that's not really enough to do anything for me, I guess.
yeah, I think my favorite has to be like that final second scene where the woman just looks to the side and then it's like something scary happens. It's great stuff. I guess that's one of my main problems with this movie. It was obviously made for a PG-13 audience, which doesn't need to be a bad thing. But this one, it felt somewhat restricted in a very generic sense. There's not much here that, is like some big move for the genre, and it's not really even enough here to make it all that interesting. I suspect part of the problem with the whole idea of making more EVP movies is a guy watching screens and listening to audio tapes is it always the most enthralling of times.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of bad people trying to communicate from the other side, as he's trying to obviously reach his wife or whoever, but yeah, it just... I also didn't really like the turn that it takes where, okay, he's more or less seeing visions of things that haven't happened yet. I thought it would have been better had it just gone in the direction of, okay, he's trying to reach his wife and somehow he's woken up these bad spirits or whatever, and I guess go from there, but seems to go into some sort of psychic type route, which I didn't
Yeah, so it sort of reminded me of the Dad Zone a little, actually.
Yeah.
I will say, while I did love the ending, I did like the setting, a very dilapidated, I think factory type thing. The walls are all standing with some floor, but there's a giant hole through the middle and just raining into the building. I thought it was pretty cool looking, and I can't imagine that type of thing existing in you can think of the more industrial and mostly forgotten cities. So I don't know, it's just cool setting. I just did love the ending.
Plus, I don't know why in all these types of movies, everyone has these upscale jobs and homes and okay, so the lead character is this architect working for this pretty big company, and his wife is a fucking author, or some sort of popular author. I mean, why can't they just be normal people? Why can't she be a hairdresser and he's a cashier at Walmart or something? I mean, why do they have to have these big fancy jobs and homes? And
well, maybe it's part of the fantasy of just the average person watching. Hey, I can be as successful as that guy. This brings more enjoyment to the movie, and it shows that even those with money have problems.
Yeah, well, EVP can't happen for just the average Joe.
Well,
it's only for that 1%.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of the average Joe, the one thing I think, legitimately enjoy about the movie was the character of Raymond Price, who's sort of this overweight guy who is the guy who's catching a lot of these EVP things. And he's played by some actor named Ian McNeice, who's not an actor I know, but I did enjoy his, somewhat brief performance here. I was thinking early on in the first moment that there might be some type of plot twist where he's somehow behind some of this stuff, but he turns out to be a pretty nice character, and I enjoyed his brief time there.
I can't remember if it was explained in the movie or not, and this might segue to another point just about EVP in general, but I'm not 100% convinced how he could have known that it's his wife, communicating, because you can't really make out much of what anyone says from these EVP sessions. What you just saw, okay, someone died on the news recently, and you just go, well, it's a woman, it's probably this person.
Well, I guess two possible solutions. One, obviously this is a famous, at least the wife is decently well known, and the guy is important enough to maybe be recognizable, so they might get more attention than usual. And also the guy's been doing this for 15, 20 years. So I'm sure if anybody can hear voices in this white noise and static, it would be him.
Well, it's just based on the recordings they played. I couldn't really pick up on anything that made
it's also,
it clear
I think,
that
based on a lot of probably wishful thinking.
Yeah, which takes me into what I was about to say about EVP, is that, my general thoughts on EVP itself is that I think people just hear what they want to hear and see what they want to see. It's probably just picking up background noise from a local radio station or TV station or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about EVP personally. It's not like I've done a bunch of research, but as far as I can tell, there's not much actual science backing the findings, so I'm probably not going to take it seriously until then.
Yeah.
Plus, I have to say, I think it might be annoying trying to communicate with your deceased loved ones and only getting like a vague sentence in return. Like, I don't know, that wouldn't be satisfactory to me.
There was a a moment in the movie that kind of, wow, made me chuckle, I guess. When Michael Keaton's got all these TVs that he's setting up and his son is saying something like, why we got so many TVs? And he's like, oh, well, so you can watch your favorite show and I can watch my favorite show. And immediately his kid gives him the most stankiest look. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And then he just goes back to playing with his toy or whatever. That was beautiful, I guess.
Yes. So I think White Noise it's an okay movie. It's maybe entertaining for the first time around. I feel like a lot of people forget it exists though. I must never hear anybody talking about this one, and I think there's good reason for that. I mean, if you're like a big Michael Keaton fan, it might be worth checking out. Or if you like generic ghost movies, hey, this movie's got you, homeboy. But you know, it's just not a great movie. It's not particularly memorable. And though I don't think it's necessarily horrible, it's not a movie I can see myself going back to anytime soon. So I'm going to go with a 5.5 out of 10, and I guess I'll be generous and round up to a 6.
Yeah, so I'm also going with a 6 out of 10 for this one, which is around my average rating for movies. So, you know, it's okay. It's nothing special one way or the other. Michael Keaton helps it out a little bit, just because I usually enjoy other movies with Michael Keaton in them, so at least that kept my attention for the most part. But yeah, it's not a movie that... I mean, I've had that DVD for 15 years. I've maybe watched it now second time.
Oh God.
Yeah, so it you know, it's not a movie I'm pulling out watching very often.
Yeah, it's not particularly inspiring.
Yeah, I'm kind of, well, I don't know if I'm surprised, but the fact that there's a sequel, I mean, I guess it did okay money. No, I haven't seen the sequel, but I'm going to guess it's more of the same, just with a different lead actor.
Yeah, only without Michael Keaton, I can only imagine it would make it so much more lukewarm.
Yeah.
Speaking of movies with flying creatures in it, we now go over to the Alfred Hitchcock classic The Boards from 1963, in which this wealthy woman has a sort of creepy desire to get with this one guy she saw for like 5 seconds, and follows him to a small California town on the bay. It's beautiful, and then hey, these boards start attacking, and it's all out chaos. So yeah, it's a... If you just look at the story like an overall view, it's not necessarily a complicated movie. I do think it stands up decently well. It's perhaps a bit longer than it needs to be. It's almost a 2-hour movie. But I think there's a decent amount of suspense being built, and slowly there's more and more inaccurate attacks, and you know, it's maybe a small thing about flying into somebody, then a bit of snapping during a birthday party. But then once they sort of swarm upon the town, it's just all out chaos. It's beautiful, and I actually found myself enjoying this one quite a bit more than I thought I would, based on the last time I saw it.
Well, it's the first time I've seen this movie because, as we know, I don't really care to watch too many films from before the 70s. And yeah, no, this movie's not for me. It's I mean, I enjoyed Psycho quite a bit for a movie from, you know, being before the 70s and all, but yeah, this movie, I didn't really pick up on any or much of the suspense that you did. And I don't know, maybe that's because in Australia, getting attacked by birds is a normal, everyday thing. It happens all the time here. Like, I was earlier this year, when I was dropping my daughter off to school, I saw one of the other kids getting attacked by a bird, and I was just laughing about it because it was funny. So therefore, I mean, if it's not scary in real life, like that type of situation, I'm probably not going to find it all that thrilling in a movie either.
Well, that probably just goes to show how hardcore you Australian people are.
Yeah, well, and when it comes to birds, yeah, I mean, you can go on YouTube and you can search for magpie attacks and things like that, and I'm sure you'll find heaps of videos of people just getting attacked by birds.
Or you might be lucky enough to find a beautiful movie directed by Hitchcock.
Yeah, maybe. Well, speaking of which, I will give the movie that much, that there are quite a lot of parts to the movie where, you know, the scenery is really nice. It's a movie that's shot pretty well. Like visually. It's just, yeah, I just didn't really get any suspense out of it, or... I mean, even the bird attacking scenes, you know, I get that, you know, back in the day, those type of effects were, you know, about as good as you're gonna get. But watching green screen type things like that happening all throughout, even when they're driving, that's one of those things where they're driving, you can clearly tell they've got, like, I don't know, they've spliced two things together there. So yeah, it's just something that kind of bugs me when they do that.
Well, I think on the upside, at least the movie has better effects than Birdemic did.
Yeah, but I guess, I mean, I haven't seen Birdemic, but obviously I've seen little bits and pieces of it. And even though I can definitely say The Bird's probably by far a better movie, who knows, maybe I would actually be more entertained by Birdemic, I don't know.
Birdemic is certainly entertaining, but how can you beat a beautiful 2-hour bird attack movie in wonderful color?
In which the bird attacks don't really happen until about an hour in.
Indeed, and that is something I wanted to. It's a good segue time, because I think one of the first best scenes in this movie, there's I think two scenes or sequences that really stand out for me. One being the classic scene in which the main actress is smoking while behind her on the jungle gym, more and more birds are flying to the gym, and then she looks up and sees a bird and looks behind her, and hey, the whole jungle gym is covered with birds. And they're not they're not like attacking or anything, they're just sitting there. But as a viewer, you know, like, oh hey, that's some stuff is about to go down. And you know, she slowly walks away and is able to get the kids out of the schoolhouse before they all die. But as Jackie said, some of them still attacked, and it's somewhat amusing. But then it segues into, I think, another fantastic sequence in which she enters like the local hotspot, talks to a few people. Some people argue about whether or not birds attacking is actually happening, and there's like about 10 minutes of conversation, and then, hey, another beautiful bird attack as they swoop down with a wonderful bird's eye view of the bay, swoop down and cause all this mayhem. And it's a beautiful, there's some explosions, a bunch of people panicking, running around, and I know that sequence right there is probably one of my favorites in the movie, because afterwards there's just a bunch of almost slow burn stuff going on in the house, which isn't as interesting. So I would say that's probably my personal highlight of the movie.
Yeah, well, when the mother character, she finds that dead body, and it looks like the eyes have been gouged out, and I mean, obviously, you know, that gave me a little hope for the rest of the movie, but
only to be taken away.
Yeah, unfortunately, nothing really much more. I mean, there was, you know, the one guy that burned alive after, I can't remember if it was cigarette or cigar, but anyways, you know, he dies pretty epically, but yeah, aside from those two, and maybe the it's the end of the world guy, I mean,
that guy's pretty fun.
Yeah, it was enjoyable, but yeah, I didn't have enough here for a 2-hour movie to enjoy. Speaking of which, was it the lead actress who said her job was finding 4-letter words? Was that her?
I'm going to say yes, only because I forget.
Okay, well, I got a few 4-letter words for her. fuck this shit.
Hey, I thought she did the most beautiful job.
Yeah, I guess.
I do think it's somewhat interesting actually where the movie goes toward the end. There's a scene in which one of the characters walks into a room that they suspect boards have broken into, and they have the reason that she walks into the room isn't exactly made clear. But this character does, so that then gets swarmed by boards and gets fucked up pretty badly. Actually, I mean, it's not like a brutal scene, but it has some decent quality to it. And then like for the rest of the movie, and admittedly there's not that much left in the movie, maybe 10 minutes, 15 at most. But for the rest of the movie, she's just like in a complete catatonic shock. So it's fun that individual from pretty much being the main character to being entirely useless in the last 15 minutes. So that's fun.
I guess one other thing that I'll just quickly mention, just another small thing that I enjoyed, was when that one woman who had the 2 kids at the diner or whatever it was, and she starts freaking out at the lead actress in the movie, saying, it's all your fault, whatever, and she got slapped. That felt good. I enjoy watching crazy people get slapped.
I mean, but let's think about the children who had to watch the mother get physically abused just because of an opinion. Tisk, tisk.
They're already traumatized by people talking about killer birds. Now they're watching their mother get the smackdown. Whoosh! Yeah. Yeah, so given my love of movies from before the 70s, or lack thereof.
I do believe we will eventually find something maybe you almost enjoy.
Well, hey, Psycho was enjoyable.
There you go.
And, for obvious enough reasons. But, yeah, The Birds, it's not for me. I'm giving it a 4 out of 10, and that's mainly, like I said earlier, it's probably because I just don't find birds attacking people to be all that scary. Like I said, happens every day here in Australia, so if the scare factor of that's taken out, or the suspense factor, we'll say suspense factor, because I can't see anyone, well, I don't know, if people are watching this and they're saying, oh, I'm so scared, I'd have to give them a reality check. But yeah, like, for a 2-hour movie, there's just not enough enjoyable scenes for me. There's a few quick moments that were somewhat entertaining, but yeah, nowhere near enough to sustain a 2-hour runtime.
Yeah, so I might agree partially that the movie may run a bit longer than it needs to. At the same time, I think we can all agree this is probably one of the best movies made from 1963. So I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10. I think a lot of the slow building up of the boards attacking, I think it's done pretty well. There's a few scenes of maybe a little more violence than you might expect, like you mentioned, finding the body that was had its eyes popped out, and then there's also the violence towards children, which nowadays might not look like much, but it's not too often you see like children of that age range getting attacked by anything. So kudos there. I don't know, to me, I found it a pretty enjoyable movie, which, like I said at the beginning, sort of surprised me because when I first saw this, many years ago, I had much, maybe pretty similar opinion that Chucky had. There was maybe a bit slow and not enough going in it to entertain me. But nowadays, I find it pretty enjoyable, so 9 out of 10 seems like a pretty fair rating.
Well, I would have considered a 5 maybe if the movie was trimmed by 30-40 minutes.
Well, maybe the next time they make a 2-hour movie with attacking pterodactyls, it'll just come over about it.
Yes.
Okay, next up we have Evil Come, Evil Go from 1972. And I'm just going to read the plot right off IMDb, which is pretty true for the movie. A religious fanatic murders people who are engaging in sex. And as you can imagine, well, maybe you can't imagine. This isn't a movie that is necessarily easy to imagine unless you've been exposed to like low budget 70s cinema. But this is like as grindhouse as a movie can get. It's very basic with this religious nutcase going around killing. She herself is engaged in these carnal activities, but she's still killing other men because men are evil. And she's also part lesbian because she gets with this one lesbian chick and they go and kill more people and they ask, yeah, and it's a pretty good movie.
I can't tell how serious you are about that, but
Well, my rating at the end would explain just how serious I am. But I'm sort of curious. Have you heard about this one before, or is this one like something completely out of the blue?
yeah, no, I don't recall ever hearing about this one, so definitely a first time watch for me. It was interesting, I guess. Not all that long, I don't think it was, but well, first things first. I mean, I don't even know if this movie has an actual ending.
I know it's that finale was most ingenious.
Yeah, I mean, the movie just does things, but it doesn't really go anywhere to like any kind of conclusion, really. I mean, it almost feels like it's missing the last 20 minutes. But I will say I didn't have as much of a bad time with this as other people do, I guess, because from what I remember, it had a really low rating on IMDb. The story to it's okay. Like I've always said in the past that I do find religious wackos to be somewhat creepy in some form or another. So, I guess this is another one. I wouldn't say I was really too worried about anything that was happening in the movie, but to be honest, I find basically sex or porn or anything from this era to be just plain filthy. All I can think of is like the relaxed standards of hygiene and yeah, I don't know, dirty motherfuckers.
Well, the 70s was a beautiful time for the porn industry, though.
Mm,
And who can blame them after seeing all these beautiful women?
yeah. Well, yeah, I like that one guy's idea at the beginning of the movie on how he could get her to shut up. Just go down on me. Just then I don't have to listen to you talk.
Yeah, that guy might have had somewhat of a primitive mindset, shall we say? But such was the time period.
Yeah, and actually, just before I forget, it was funny because I was trying to look up trailers of some of the movies that we were watching for today's show. I was trying to look for a trailer for this, and it's not coming up on YouTube, and I was like, or at least there's maybe a couple of videos of people talking about the movie, but that's about it. And so I Google searched it, and the trailer's on a porn site, so I know it's sort of that type of movie, so then I was like, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? But I mean, you can put a trailer together without showing all the nakedness, but I guess that might limit you somewhat as to what you can show from this movie. But yeah, so I saw that. Just thought that was an amusing thing to mention. We'll call them the love scenes in this movie, or well, the sex scenes. I don't know what the hell is going on with the cameraman. He's all over the shop. It's almost like he's trying to beat off to what he's filming.
Well, it's quite possible he was.
And speaking of the sex scenes, numerous times in the movie, this one cat just randomly jumps all over the place on the bed while they're doing it. So that was definitely an Oscar-worthy performance from that cat.
Yes. Yeah, so I will say, on a somewhat related note, I'm not generally fond of scenes like this from the 70s. I don't know, I guess like Chucky said, it just seems so old-fashioned might not be the right word, but it's not quite as the modern day experience as you might hope to anticipate. I mean, I do think a decent amount of the women in the movie though were pretty attractive, so it was almost okay just to see them being so happy in the material and engaged with the acting, but at least they had that going for it.
If I think the character's name was Penny, I can't remember, but you know, if she wasn't such a religious nut, yeah, you know, I'd hit it, I guess.
Yeah, and that's I don't know, like Pandy's a somewhat strange character. She just like sort of, you know, when Sister Sarah's like panhandling for one, she just pops out, oh hey, I help you, I hate men, and later turns out that she's a lesbian, but then she's one of those like really religious lesbians, I guess, and she can be talked into anything apparently. So I guess if you want to blindfold a young lesbian to a bar, here you go.
Yeah.
I mean,
that scene was pretty
that
long,
whole
by the way.
sequence was sort of strange to me, but then again, it's not like the movie was necessarily deep in its like logical story connections.
For reals.
I also like the random couple at the end. You know, as the two women are hiding the body, they come across this one couple who just makes love, and then afterwards a guy comes up, I knew you girls were there the whole time. And that, of course, leads to the aforementioned non-conclusion conclusion.
Speaking of enjoyable moments, I guess, I did enjoy her attempt at trying to get a free lunch, and then results in her kind of like mouthing "fuck you" after not getting a hot dog for free.
I mean, that was a pretty cheap hot dog too, at least by modern day standards, so I definitely would have been okay with that price.
Yeah, inflation, I guess, probably. I don't have a calculator in front of me, but I'm going to guess it's going to cost you at least $3 or $4 these days.
I feel like just because I'm saving people's souls, I should probably get it for free though.
Yeah.
And actually, speaking of which, if that's your type of thing, this movie does feature a wonderful theme song, which I think pops up twice throughout the movie. A nice soft rock ballad about the main character's quest to kill all the evil men. Unfortunately, I cannot find the song itself alone on YouTube, but it's certainly worth listening to.
You put it on your Spotify playlist.
You know what? If I could actually find that song alone, I would.
I mean, it's surprising actually how many older songs you can find from these older movies, especially the more obscure movies like Sweet 16 from the early 80s. You can find that soundtrack on Spotify.
I guess that's nice because that can potentially lead to a somewhat increased exposure. Although I can't see that happening with this one, especially since
No.
this movie has a somewhat more adult feel to it. Actually, on a related note, I'm trying to phrase this carefully. I enjoyed the fact that there was male frontal nudity was something I
You enjoyed the male frontal nudity.
Okay.
I knew it.
There you go. Because that's something that you obviously don't see in your everyday horror movie. No, this one has a more, like we said, a more adult feel to it. Potentially straight up pornography.
Oh, speaking of which, this actually reminded me. Oh man, some of those close-ups, like the cameraman once again, just ultra weird zoom-ins of body parts. Like he just like get the entire guy's dick and balls right in the entire frame. Like, oh man.
Think about how much practice he had to do that.
And which reminds me, because when I watch this movie, or usually when I watch movies for the show, I try to just make a few notes of, you know, things happening or things I'd say about the movie. And usually I use Notepad just on my laptop that's sitting in front of me. And I had like, I don't know, maybe close to 10 different note points about this movie by the time I was done. And then I went to type something else and I must have accidentally highlighted and deleted some of it. And the thing with Notepad is Control Z only works once. So I lost all my notes that I had typed for this movie immediately after I'd finished the movie. So I had to kind of rethink about everything I just saw and type it all again. That was one of the notes that I forgot to add back in, so I'm glad you mentioned your enjoyment of the male pieces.
Yeah, the male reproductive system is a very interesting biological aspect of the male human. And if that is one of your main interests, this movie can show you a little bit of what we might be talking about, and maybe more than a little bit. Though I have to say, none of the guys are my idea of what an attractive guy would be, but hey, it was the 70s.
Yeah, and I guess you should also say it's a bit unusual that the guy was so flaccid, considering he's having sex.
Yeah, I would imagine, and maybe I'm wrong, but I would have to guess those were probably mostly amateurs as opposed to people who had actually worked in the pornographic industry. I may be wrong, but I don't know. I guess I don't have much experience with pornography from the 1970s, so maybe that's pretty on par with what you might usually see. But I don't know. To me, that's not the most captivating material you can imagine.
You need to go find some of those old Sylvester Stallone pornos.
That is top one on my priority list. Sylvester Stallone pornography. There you go.
Yeah, Premium Bush.
Now, if Sylvester Stallone had been in Evil Come, Evil Go, would that have boosted it up to like an 8?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Indeed. So, Evil Come, Evil Go is a interesting movie. I think some people, if they don't know anything about, let's say, this time period in the horror genre, or if they don't have much experience with some of the lower budget 70s movies, this might come as a bit of a surprise. Just the quality of the movie. I've seen a decent amount from this time, so the quality itself didn't bother me, and I even thought the story had some potential. Just the basic, hey, religious person goes around killing people who have sex. I just wish they had done it in like a different way. Like there's some parts of this that seemed unrealistic. Like the main character wanting to host like a TV show to talk about her thing to kill out men, and just this rich girl just paying for it. Like I don't think it's going to happen even back in the 70s. So it's certainly a movie that you can tell it's aged, and it's unique to watch. It's not a great movie, but like I said, it has a catchy song, some pretty attractive women, a beautiful conclusion, and an almost okay idea. So I think I'll probably give this one a 5 out of 10. I enjoyed it not enough to really necessarily like it, but even though it's only like 75-ish minutes, I just can't see myself going after this one again.
Yeah, I concur. It's I mean, I didn't enjoy the penis as much as Jiggy did, but yeah. Yeah, 5 out of 10 from me. Just slap a Brazzers logo in the bottom corner there, and other people will come watch it.
That's beautiful. And if anybody actually wants this movie, I think it was released on DVD some time ago, so look out for it. It's probably quite expensive nowadays, though.
I wouldn't be surprised if it gets a Blu-ray release, because I noticed the label that released the trailer that I saw. I know they release a whole lot of stuff on Blu-ray, so
it's amazing the things they release to Blu-ray.
Yeah, and it might already be on Blu-ray. I'm not sure. I didn't really go check, but there you go. Moving on to Brick from 2005. And as I said earlier in the introduction, it's a movie in which Joseph Gordon-Levitt channels his inner Jiggy. I just kept thinking, hey, it's Jiggy in a movie.
Unfortunately, I don't look nearly as cool as he does.
Don't be so hard on yourself. Anyways, his character goes on this investigation by infiltrating this intricate high school drug dealing operation in an effort to find out what caused the death of his ex-girlfriend, whose body he stumbles upon early in the movie. this is a movie that a lot of people seem to praise, and I've tried watching it so many times ever since it came out, and I've always been intrigued by it, but I've never been able to get into the movie whenever I watch it. And I think a big part of that is that this is a movie in which people rarely shut the fuck up, at least for a good portion of the movie. And it's hard to follow what's happening because there's just so much dialogue all over the place. But I did watch it again last night, or at least I don't think I've ever made it from start to finish trying to watch this movie in the past, but last night I did, and I actually had a pretty decent time with it. Still wasn't great, but I feel like the more and more I watch it, I could potentially enjoy it more, just because I can't keep up with all the dialogue that's going on. And so I guess the more I watch it, the more I'll pick up from all the dialogue, and eventually, at some point, maybe when I'm 60, I'll actually know everything that's being said in the movie.
Yeah, just to actually follow up on that. So I'd never heard of this movie before. So when I first saw the plot before I actually chose to watch it, I'm like, oh hey, that sounds mildly interesting. I can enjoy a good high school mystery if it's done well. I didn't even notice Gordon Levitt was in the movie until like after I picked it. But it sounded like it had potential, and I started watching it. So for like the first 20 minutes, I was just really confused. Something just seemed different about this movie, and it didn't even hit me until like, let's say 25ish minutes in. But a lot of the dialogue is it uses a lot of phrases and such that isn't necessarily in a normal vernacular. A lot of like sayings and an interesting use of words, something that you might expect from like an extreme version of this would be like a Clockwork Orange, which just makes up words. This one you can understand the flow of conversation, but it just sounds like one of those old crime detective movies from the 1950s at times. So there's just a lot of interesting and like I said, somewhat clever dialogue in this movie, and I'll probably point out a few of them later, but it definitely gives the movie a unique feeling. So even if you aren't a giant fan of the direction the movie takes and have some problems with the story itself, I do appreciate like the feel it was going for.
Yeah, and I guess in addition to feel for the movie, I guess the theme music they've got in the movie, which they play in different variations, it's another thing that kind of stands out to me. It's just one of those movies where you hear the music and ultimately, like, I could pinpoint like what movie that music belongs to. So I guess it stands out to some extent.
Yeah, it was a sort of a nice, almost melancholic sort of tone to it, which suits the mood of the movie too. I mean, it's a bright movie because it takes place like in a sunny, I'm assuming California town. So it's nice, bright and sunny most of the time. But the themes it deals with are pretty dark, and even the ending itself is pretty bittersweet. You don't even necessarily get a good gauge on what a quote-unquote victory would even be in a situation like this.
That's right.
And it's also worth noting that my high school experience was slightly different than this guy's. So.
You don't quite have the same fetish for getting punched.
Although I will say I thought the fight scenes were refreshingly decent. I mean, I like how this guy's the protagonist, but he fights pretty dirty at times, so kudos to him.
He got into that fight with that football player pretty casually. He was like, yeah, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, and the guy, I'll be honest, I haven't seen a whole bunch of movies with Joseph Gordon-Levitt in it, but I really enjoyed his performance here, even though his character isn't something I completely understand. I did enjoy his character here, and I think obviously he's easily the best character, the best actor in the movie. But then you have the guy who played, I think it was Brain, who's some actor named Matt O'Leary, the name I don't particularly know. But he was also, I think, pretty enjoyable, mainly because I thought he had some of the best quotes in the movie, and I always enjoyed anytime he popped up.
Yeah, it was only just before we started the show that I looked him up, because there's something about him that just kept, like, there's something familiar about him. And I do recognize him from 2 movies. One is a movie that I actually give a 10 out of 10 to, which is Death Sentence. He plays the punk that kills Kevin Bacon's son in the movie. But then also, he's one of the 2 boys from Frailty. Which is not necessarily a movie that I love, but I know a lot of other people do, so that's where he's from. But yeah, there's quite a few actors in this movie that, you know, I've seen them before. Like, even the I don't remember her name, but, you know, the one that let's just say she's there at the end with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Even her, I was like, I've seen her in something before, and I look her up and I'm not really noticing anything she's in. And I noticed she's in American Pie 2, listed as girl at the party or something like that. Like, obviously she's in the movie for like 10 seconds. But I immediately recall what scene she's from, where she's like one of the girls making fun of Jim and his internet video, where he's like, "Oh, Nadio, don't go, splat."
That is an impressive American Pie memory.
Well, I do tend to just watch those movies a whole bunch, like just in the background. I can put it on and do other things and kind of just giggle at it. So I've seen it probably more times than anyone needs to.
Yes. I have nothing to say to that.
Yeah, but no, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, he's he's a talented actor. He's even directed movies, and he's I mean, I first saw him in TV show Third Rock from the Sun, so, and he was a young teenager in that movie, so he's certainly come a long way, and he's getting huge roles, and he's good.
Yes. So I just want to just point out one of the scenes. Well, I enjoyed a lot of the scenes laid down in the movie, a decent amount. There's a character named The Pin, who's like the local, like, I was going to say Big Boss Dracula guy, but he's like, what, 15 maybe? I like his like cane and trench coat, by the way. It's a beautiful look. Anytime you see a teenager walking around with a cane, just cracks me up. But hey, here's Fancy. But this is a scene early in the movie before we meet the character, in which the main guy, Gordon Levitt, is talking to this brain guy, Matt O'Leary, talking about the Pin. And the brain just mentions that he may be a myth. Nobody's ever seen him, and he has the line, "If you got half your rat in town together and said, show your hands if any of them have actually seen the Pin, you get a crowd full of pockets." And it's that type of dialogue. It's sort of reminiscent of, like I said, the hardboiled detective type movies. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with the Max Payne games, somewhat early 2000s games I played on Xbox, but it's just, again, same type of dialogue that has a very unique feel to it. And even though I didn't love the movie overall, I really appreciated whoever the hell wrote the script, because I thought it was a very unique stylistic addition to the story.
Well, speaking of drawing parallels to games and things like that, it did remind me of one of my favorite games as well, a game called Broken Sword, which is essentially a game in which you're just going from person to person, asking questions. You're trying to, find answers to essentially something that happens right at the start of the game, which is basically a clown who blows up a cafe in Paris. So it just reminded me a lot of that game, because it's a game in which you just go around, you talk to everyone you can find, trying to get clues and answers, and eventually moving on to the next part until you get to the eventual conclusion to the story. And that's more or less what this movie felt like. He's going around talking to this person, that person, every person he can find, trying to somehow edge his way towards closer getting the answers that he needs.
And also, it's impressive that this guy was able to do that without dying, because this guy got really screwed up throughout the movie. Like, he passes out twice. I mean, at any point in like the last 25, 30 minutes, this guy could have just dropped.
And he's lucky he didn't get run over by the car earlier in the film. So
that was a beautifully tense scene. And actually, that's another thing, now that you mention it, that might be worth bringing up. But the character driving the car there, I think the guy's name is Tag. But, for the most of the movie, he's just like this, thoughtless muscle, But then he gets a little bit of character toward the end, and I found that not necessarily surprising, but I found it somewhat refreshing. So, again, nice choice for this movie.
Yeah. So with Brick, it's a movie that I think I'm warming up to it. It's a movie I've tried watching so many times before, and like I said, there's just so much dialogue to try and interpret, and some of it just kept going over my head, and the more I try to watch it, I guess I gain a little more traction in actually understanding and enjoying the movie. It's still quite a bit convoluted, but I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So I can see myself potentially still enjoying this even more than I did this time, but for now, I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, so this is a movie that at first, the first 15 minutes in, I really wasn't able to get into. I'm not sure what it was. I guess, like I said, the whole vibe just fell off, and I wasn't fully catching what was going on. And it's something very important that happens at the beginning of the movie too. So it's sort of a shame that I wasn't necessarily fully involved at the beginning. But as the movie picked up and I got more of this dialogue, that again, I really loved the dialogue. I mean, such classic lines as "the ape blows while I clam." I mean, who doesn't like blowing apes and clams? So it's the dialogue really pulled me into whatever type of alternate universe this is, where high school students, instead of going to class, are involved in like shady drag wars and dad ex-girlfriend. It's a beautiful time. And plus the fantastic chase scene in which Gordon Levitt just sort of slides out and trips that guy. I mean, that was a pretty classy move. I really enjoyed that scene. So I enjoyed this movie at the end more than I thought I would based on the first 15 minutes. But I think it's going to take me a few more times to watch it until I can grasp every aspect that I may have missed this time around. But I think for now, I think a 7 out of 10 is pretty good. And this is a movie I can see going higher with a little more, I guess, focus next time I watch a movie. But 7 out of 10 seems like a pretty good time.
Yeah, it's just one of those movies that I think you have to see it multiple times just to really get everything.
Well, on the opposite, we have a movie that you only need to see once because it's just that fantastic. And that would be the 1981 slasher classic, The Burning, which is pretty much this one prank goes wrong as pranks often do in movies. And this one guy gets horribly burned and he wants revenge on those who pretty much ruined his life. Not that he had a particularly good life to begin with, but that's probably beside the point. So this guy named Crapsy is, basically going out and fucking people up with a pair of garden shears. And it's, since, the special effects were obviously, pretty good. Pretty much, well, mainly because Tom Savini did them. But so given the special effects and the very classic feel, it takes a little while for the killings to start. You get a lot of like camp shenanigans, like these kids either flirting with each other, just doing things that kids at camp, I guess, did back in the 80s. I don't know. I've never been to camp, so I can't say. So it takes a little to get going, but once things do get going, I think it's a pretty satisfying time. And it's not going to be like the best slasher movie of the 80s, but I do think it's a pretty decent one. So has this been like a long time favorite of those, or is this just one you have seen that often?
I've seen it a few times. I never really heard of it until after let's just say the raft scene made its rounds on the internet back in the early 2000s, or early to mid 2000s. And so obviously after that point I'd seen it, and and seen it quite a few times since. I mean, it is, in terms of 80s slashers, yeah, it's an enjoyable 80s slasher. I do feel, outside of the initial viewing of the raft scene, which, look, I mean, that's the scene that really everyone points to when they talk about this movie, and I mean, it's a good scene, and I feel that people tend to overrate this movie a little bit just based on that scene. And when I say overrate, I'm not saying, well, it's not a good movie. It's still an enjoyable movie. It's just, I feel like outside of that scene, there's nothing all that special about the movie.
Yeah, I just think it's like you said, it's not like a partial movie by any means, but it's at least like at worst, it's like an average early 80s slasher. And I mean, which average early 80s slasher wasn't at least a 9 out of 10? So I mean, it's like it's not a great movie, but hey, it's still a slasher from one of the best time periods of slasher movies. And like I said, it has a classic feel. I mean, I even enjoy this one probably a bit more than Sleepaway Camp. So I don't know, it just has to me, it has like a very classic feel that I enjoy seeing, that you can probably get from most early Friday the 13th movies too, or any, I guess you could say, camp-based slasher movie from the time period. But I don't know, to me it has a good feeling to it, pretty interesting antagonist. I do enjoy how we don't see his face until like the very end, and that sort of needless flashback. Oh hey, this is the same kid who was in on the prank. I mean, I can't imagine that came as a big surprise to a lot of people. Maybe newer movies have spoiled that twist for me.
Just one other thing that I just keep thinking about whenever I do see that raft scene is that it makes me wonder why all four of them just sat on the raft waiting to be killed, because he kills them one by one basically. Like, why they could just jump in the water? I'm not one.
Well,
I'm not one to, dissect a scene and say, this is what I would have done. But I just feel like there was more than enough time for someone to, jump off.
Or maybe they thought that it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
Maybe they've just been so demoralized with life that they just let you die at like 15 years old.
Yeah.
Actually, a scene that I really enjoy, and it's a scene that I guess I don't remember from last time I saw the movie. But
enjoying the hooker scene.
Well, that scene almost feels out of place, but I got, it obviously has its meaning for the movie. And by the way, that was not a hooker I would particularly want to take time with, but that's just my personal taste. The scene when this one Dick, I think his name's Glazer, just pushes this one kid into the water. The kid himself can't swim, so like he does this in front of like a sort of a raft thing full of teenage girls. I think he wants to get with one of them, so he just pushes this kid who can't swim in the water, and it's like, he can't swim, right? And it's like, well, then save him or he'll drown. And my favorite thing about this is, I guess he thinks the girls are going to be impressed with him because he just swims over and it's like, hey, I almost killed someone, look at me. like I don't know what type of macho mindset, like, hey, I just pushed this kid who got swim in the water, now have sex with me. Like, I'm not sure what needs to be wrong with you to have that going through your mind, but that scene just cracked me up.
Well, I was impressed that despite all of this, he still managed to get some in the movie.
He did indeed. Not that his performance is particularly the best that you can hope for.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty much the epitome of a talking sausage, I guess.
That's a phrase I've never heard of in my life.
Well, neither have I. I just made it up.
Oh, okay. That would explain it.
Let's just say a bit of a meathead.
Yeah, I'm not too out of the loop then. But so that's actually another thing I sort of like about this movie. It's just, we never learn a whole lot about most of these characters, but I do enjoy like some of the character interactions, especially how some of these kids aren't, they try to treat Alfred's a bully kid. They try to treat Alfred with at least some decent respect. A guy named Dave who tries to treat him pretty nicely, and so I enjoy that there's a little bit of characterization here before all of them get killed. So, and also even some of the nameless characters who just appear in the background for a bit, such as some of the kids who were on the raft. Everybody has a distinct look to them, so it's sort of at least nice to follow the story such as it is.
Yeah. And just bringing up sort of a different subject here, because no one really talked about this for quite a while, and now we start seeing it mentioned here and there with everything that happened with Harvey Weinstein. And now people are pointing out, okay, The Burning is really his movie. I mean, he wrote the movie, he created the movie, so, and this is a guy who's gotten in a lot of trouble for, let's just say, mistreating a lot of young women in movies that he's involved with. So, and then you think about all the people who say, oh, well, you shouldn't watch Clown House because of Victor Salva. And I think it's the more and more time goes by, you start seeing all these other films that you enjoy that, there's someone attached to it who, is a terrible person. And I think it's just another argument to say, it's just another way of helping the argument of saying, you just got to separate, I guess, the art from the artist. I don't necessarily enjoy that phrase, but I guess that's basically what I'm saying, because you can see, you could say, earlier past this movie, there's a lot of scenes with, young girls just jumping around, and I mean, there's even that shower scene.
It's a classic baseball game.
Yeah.
Hey, I like that scene.
The shower scene earlier on in the movie, who'd be surprised if that was actually a real reaction of her catching Harvey Weinstein checking her out in the shower, and they're like, perfect, we'll use that in the movie.
I'm hoping that's not how that scene came about.
Yeah, but in any case, just another reason to separate things like that from the movie itself.
Yeah, no, I don't speak to a whole plethora of horror movie people, so I've not seen any outrage against, oh my god, you can't watch The Burning. Obviously, I think everybody's seen that type of reaction toward Jeepers Creepers, so I'm hoping it doesn't get to the point where the same reaction is going on with this movie, because like I said, it's not a particularly fantastic slasher movie, but it's still a pretty decent one, and I don't think there's any great reason to not watch it just because of some of the actions of the people behind it. I don't think that devalues the movie or the story to me. So that's just my take.
The problem with people is they pick and choose what to be outraged by. I mean, and I think more people are outraged by Clown House just because it's just not loved as much as The Burning is. So, and I mean, me personally, I actually slightly prefer Clown House over this, but they're both decent.
I will concur. Clown House, I forget what rating I gave it, but I gave it a pretty good rating because that was actually a pretty decent movie for what it was. But The Burning itself is also a beautiful movie, and like I said, it's a slasher that came out during the heyday of the slasher movies, just a year after the first Friday the 13th, and great special effects when they pop up. I enjoy quite a bit about the movie, the characters, basic camp story. So this is a movie I don't think it's amazing, but like I said, I enjoy. So I'm going to throw this one a 7.5 out of 10. And I think, at least for the time being, I'll probably round it down to a 7 out of 10. But that's one that could go either way because I do enjoy this movie.
Well, we're in agreement with a lot of movies on today's show, aside from The Birds.
And that disagreement was 5 Fs.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm going to also give this one a 7. Yeah, it's a classic 80s slasher, at least for slasher fans. So, I mean, I personally don't see it as anything like a special movie or anything, but yeah, I mean, if you're into, you know, your Friday the 13th or your earlier Friday the 13th films, like feels like it's got like similar vibe to like Part 2, I guess, or Sleepaway Camp, the original Sleepaway Camp, the movies like that. And I enjoy those about the same as I enjoyed this, so there you go. But I one other thing that I will just mention is the music in this movie, also quite an enjoyable part to the film.
Yeah, I was actually surprised, because it's been a little while since I've seen this. I actually have it on DVD, and I haven't watched the DVD copy I have until now. So, but I was surprised by how decent I found most of the music to be. Because most of the times I don't necessarily notice it in movies, but here I said, I started playing, I'm like, oh, hey, that's actually not too bad.
Oh, and I once again, whenever I see someone in a movie, I'm like, geez, I've seen that person before. And I was thinking of the blonde camp counselor, or whatever her position is at this camp. I was like, I've seen her before, and I noticed she's the American reporter in Bloodsport, the one that Van Damme has sex with. So her career went on the up after this.
If you were to call that on the up.
Yeah, well, she got to see Van Damme naked, so his ass.
and you say I'm the guy who likes male genitalia.
Hey, I didn't say I liked it. I'm saying she got to see it. Therefore, well, yeah, okay. I'll admit he's got a tight ass.
There you go.